The body count in Gaza increases daily, and there is no end in sight. The militant group Hamas rejected a ceasefire proposal Tuesday from a senior Palestinian leader, and Israel intensified its bombardment across its borders. Earlier, I spoke with Arise News correspondent Karl Bostic, who reports from Gaza City. Let's start off with the violence. It seems to be only escalating. Just give us the latest.
Well, what's happened just over an hour and a half ago, more rockets were fired into Israel, in fact, towards Jerusalem, and it took the Iron Dome anti-missile system to intercept one, maybe two of them over Jerusalem, just showing the capability of the militants here to fire rockets. The responsibility for that rocket came from Islamic Jihad, and that's maybe kind of key or important because there was a delegation of Palestinian factions in Cairo today, led by the Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas, with representatives of the other militant factions from Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and other lesser groups. And Mahmoud Abbas was saying that we've got a deal, or at least a deal for a ceasefire. But then the others, such as Hamas, were saying that's not necessarily so, in part because they can't even agree on a ceasefire. In this case, a ceasefire for Hamas or their militant groups would amount to conceding that Israel can continue doing what it's doing, that's going after tunnels. So as proof of the fact that groups like Islamic Jihad are marching to their own tune is the fact that you had rockets firing into Israel just over an hour ago towards Jerusalem. So they're not marching in lockstep, and you could almost accuse them of being in somewhat disarray. And that's why it's so hard to get to that ceasefire. And as far as the violence goes, more than 100 were killed last night in the early hours. Last night, this time, I said it could really take a turn for the worse, and it certainly did, because the Prime Minister Netanyahu went on TV telling the country to prepare for a longer protracted conflict. If not protracted, there's no end in sight just yet.
Karl, no reporter likes to insert themselves in the story that they're reporting, but can you just tell us your own experience in hearing and seeing the rocket fire throughout the night last night?
Well, for example, right now, the hotels that journalists are staying at are close to the beach, and I was staying in a small one. The beach was one of those targets last night from Israeli shelling because there was a mosque nearby, there was a fisherman's union, a jetty on a jetty nearby, and our hotels is maybe a few hundred meters away from that. So in the space of 5 hours, I stopped counting, but there were maybe more than 50, several dozen explosions surrounding the building, rocking the building, this small hotel that I was in. And the sky throughout the night was lit up bright orange from the flares that they were sending out to identify places to hit. And there were one or two occasions, for example, where my room was just completely in orange light, so much so that the door to the small balcony was blown off the hinges, and I was thrown off by a blast onto the floor. It was very unpleasant, and went downstairs, and there was another explosion, and glass was everywhere. It gave you a sense of real helplessness, and you could just only imagine what Palestinians go through where they feel so traumatized. This is a holiday period where they're supposed to be celebrating and having joy, visiting their friends and neighbors. Nobody's doing that right now. The streets are plain empty. Instead, earlier I went to that location in the El-Shati beach camp where yesterday 10 small children were playing in the street for games for Eid. And instead they were hit by a missile. And instead, the relatives, instead of receiving visitors for, celebrating the Eid, they were receiving visitors for condolences. And I went there, and it was just a somber, subdued mood, with many people simply in plain shock. And I myself, for one, have been numb all day.
I can only imagine how horrifying it is. In addition to all of that, a rocket has hit the main power plant there in Gaza. Is all the electricity out in the Gaza Strip? And what will people do without basic services like power and water?
Well, I think people aren't even living here. It's really just more of eking out a survival. It's a day-to-day thing. That power plant you talk about, it's the only power plant in Gaza. What happened was a steam generator was hit, and that in turn led to a fire in one of the fuel tanks, one of the 3 fuel tanks. They're now saying that it will take up to a year to repair or to fix Gaza's own only power plant. Already, as many as 80% of the population, the 1.7 million people here, only get, at most, on a good day, maybe 8 hours of electricity a day. They have rolling blackouts constantly. In fact, there are other electricity supplies from Israel. They buy electricity from Israel 5 of those 10 feeder lines have been damaged by the war. So you have cases where people get no more than 3 hours of electricity or sometimes none. I met a guy today. He was having problems with his generator. He says his father is very, very elderly. He can't even turn on a fan for his father. And you're talking 80, 90-degree heat. But he also needed his generator to pump water.
I wanted to ask you about Israel. They said they will not stop this ground offensive until they have destroyed all the tunnels, the systems that lead into Israeli territory. How far along are they on that campaign?
Well, right now they've identified more than 30. They say it would take several days, conservatively another week. But the problem is there's pressure to even go deeper. There's a security cabinet meeting tomorrow to decide whether to go deeper. I think the last thing I'll add is this. The longer this goes on, there's pressure on both sides, the Israeli side, the Hamas side, to walk away with some achievements for the people. On the Israeli side, they need to show that they've removed the threat of the tunnels and rockets. And the Hamas side, they need to show that they've been able to push back the Israelis out of Gaza and also lift the blockade. And that's why it's taken so long to get to that point.
All right, we're going to have to leave it right there for now. Karl Bostic reporting for us from Gaza. Karl, thank you very much, and you be safe.